Master the Skill of Mindful Living. Written and published by Audiobook. Introduction. Have you ever lived an entire day and remembered none of it? Not because your memory failed you, but because you were never truly there. Your body moved through the motions. You got dressed. You ate. You worked. You spoke. But your mind, it was scattered. Somewhere between yesterday's regret and tomorrow's anxiety. That, right there, is the silent thief of your life. This book is about reclaiming what that thief has stolen. Not just your peace. Not just your clarity. But your presence. The sacred, fleeting moment you're in, right now, as you listen to these words. Master the skill of mindful living. It's not a trendy phrase. It's not a quick-fix mantra. It's a profound way of life. One that will teach you how to feel again. How to pause before you react. How to notice the small things, like the way sunlight touches your skin, or how your breath sounds in a quiet room. How to reconnect with the only moment that ever truly exists, this one. In these pages, we will walk together through the noise of modern life. We'll peel back the layers of stress, distraction, and emotional numbness. We'll dive into the science of attention, the psychology of inner peace, and the ancient wisdom that still holds true today. But more than that, you'll hear stories, real ones, moments of breakdown, of breakthrough, of brutal honesty and soft awakenings. And with every chapter, you'll feel yourself coming home to something you forgot you had, your inner stillness. You will learn how to listen, really listen, to the whisper of your own mind. How to respond with intention. How to forgive without forgetting yourself. How to sit with discomfort and not run from it. This is not a book for those who want surface-level change. This is a guide for those ready to go deeper, to slow down, to pay attention, to live deliberately. Because the truth is, most people die long before their heart stops beating. They vanish into routines, reactions, and rushed thoughts. But you don't have to be most people. You can choose awareness. You can choose depth. You can choose to live. So let me ask you something. What would happen if, starting today, you stopped drifting and started paying attention? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Unlived Life Beneath the Noise. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you really heard silence? Not the kind of silence that happens when the TV is off. Not the awkward pause in a conversation. I mean true, sacred stillness. The kind that makes you feel like the world just stopped spinning for a moment. And you could actually hear your own heartbeat. Most people live their entire lives without that kind of silence. Because in modern life, noise is constant. Not just the sound of traffic or phones buzzing, but mental noise, emotional clutter, 1,000-watt IFS, regrets, worries, and unfinished thoughts spinning like static inside the mind. I didn't know how loud my life was until one morning, everything went quiet. It was a Sunday. Early, cold, cloudy. I woke up to no notifications, no plans, no obligations. Just the sound of the heater ticking and the dog breathing softly beside me. And something strange happened. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't rush out of bed. I just stayed. At first, the silence felt heavy, like a weight pressing down on me. But then I noticed something. The tightness in my chest relaxed. My thoughts slowed. And for the first time in weeks, I noticed my own breath. Noticed that I was alive. It hit me like a quiet wave. I had been living, but not living. Existing, yes. Functioning, absolutely. But present? Hardly. I'd been running from one task to the next, one thought to the next, without once stopping to ask, what's really going on inside me? And that was the moment I realized how much of my life I'd been missing. Here's the truth. Most people aren't present because presence is uncomfortable. Stillness feels foreign in a world that glorifies busyness. But what if stillness isn't the problem? What if it's the very thing we've been craving all along? Mindfulness isn't about sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop. It's about coming home, to you. It's the skill of noticing. How your jaw clenches when you're stressed. How your chest tightens when you lie to yourself. How your breath changes when you're near someone who drains you. It's the art of seeing, without needing to fix. The power of hearing your thoughts, without believing all of them. Let's pause for a moment. If this story is opening your eyes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. It helps us reach more souls just like yours. Now, back to our journey. Mindfulness, at its core, is the gentle practice of observation. Without judgment. Without force. But that's not easy. Because most of us were raised in environments that taught us how to react, not reflect. We were praised for answers, not questions. Rewarded for speed, not awareness. So we adapted. We became fast thinkers. Efficient doers. But we forgot how to feel. Let me tell you a story. There was a man I met once. He was a CEO, highly respected, always in control. But in private, he was unraveling. Sleepless nights. Sudden anger. Constant stress. He came to a retreat not for mindfulness, but because his doctor said he'd have a heart attack if he didn't slow down. At first, he resisted everything. Meditation annoyed him. Silence scared him. But by the third day, something cracked. He told me, "I've spent 30 years building a company, but I've never spent 1 hour with myself." That moment changed him. He began to listen. Not just to others, but to the quiet, honest voice inside him. The voice that whispered, "You're tired. You're pretending. You want something more." And for the first time, he didn't push it away. He let the truth in. That is the first step of mindful living. To stop running. To stop performing. And to begin noticing. In the next chapter, we'll talk about that voice inside you. The one that narrates your every move. Sometimes cruel. Sometimes kind. Often invisible, yet always present. But before we go there, sit with this question. What part of your life have you been too distracted to feel? Chapter 2. The voice behind your eyes. You may be wondering, who is the voice inside your head? The one narrating every moment. The one that whispers before you act. That comments, critiques, questions, judges. That reminds you of everything you should have said. That predicts what could go wrong before anything even happens. That voice is not you, but it lives in you. And until you become aware of it, it runs your life. There's a name for this in psychology, the default mode network. It's the part of your brain that activates when your mind wanders. When you're not focused on a task. When you're lost in thought. But in mindfulness, we call it something more human. The inner narrator. The voice behind your eyes. And here's what you need to understand about it. It talks all day. It never runs out of opinions. It replays past conversations. It scripts future arguments. It imagines what others think of you, most of the time, wrongly. And it rarely, almost never, lives in the present. Let me tell you about a woman named Elise. She was a teacher. Smart. Compassionate. Loved by her students. But every night, when she laid in bed, the voice started. "You're falling behind. You should have done more today. Why did you say that in the meeting? You're not enough." Elise couldn't sleep. Not because the world was loud, but because her mind wouldn't stop whispering. When she came to me, she didn't ask for meditation tips. She said, "I just want peace, inside my own head." And that is what mindfulness gives you. It doesn't silence the voice. It teaches you to recognize it. To say, "Ah, there you are again." To hear the voice, without becoming it. Here's the truth. Most of the stress you feel is not from what's happening. It's from the story you're telling yourself about what's happening. Think about that. A traffic jam doesn't cause rage. Your story about being late does. A silence in conversation doesn't cause anxiety. Your story about being judged does. A slow day doesn't cause guilt. Your story about productivity does. The voice creates the suffering. Mindfulness dissolves its power. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped and asked your inner voice, whose voice are you really? Is it your parents? An old teacher? A bully from school? Your own fear? Because often, The voice we think is ours isn't. It's borrowed, inherited, absorbed. It's the echo of criticism we never healed from. The soundtrack of shame we never paused long enough to question. But you can change that. You can rewire the inner voice. You can teach it kindness. You can slow it down. You can give it space. Mindful living starts there. Let me show you how Elise did it. Each night, instead of trying to silence the voice, she began writing down everything it said. She called it the mental weather report. She'd write, cloudy with a chance of panic. Storm warning, self-doubt incoming. Sunny, but shadows creeping in. It made her laugh, but more importantly, it made her notice. Over time, she realized the voice wasn't always right. It wasn't always her. It was just noise. Sometimes helpful, often not. And when she could see that clearly, she was free. Before we move on, if this chapter is helping you hear your own mind in a new way, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share the channel. You never know who else needs this clarity. Now let's bring this home. There's a moment in mindful practice when you become the observer. You stop reacting. You start noticing. And something shifts. The voice still speaks. But you're no longer its prisoner. You hear it. You thank it. You move forward, intentionally. That's the skill we're building. And in the next chapter, we'll go deeper. We'll explore attention, that fragile, precious force that determines what you feel, what you remember, and how fully you live. But before we get there, ask yourself this. Is the voice in your head helping you, or holding you hostage? Chapter 3. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Let's pause for a moment. What are you paying attention to, right now? Your breath? My voice? The weight of your body resting where you sit? Or are you half here, half somewhere else? Because here's a truth that quietly shapes your life. Whatever holds your attention, holds your reality. Your attention is the steering wheel of your experience. And most people are letting it drift. We live in a world designed to hijack it. Buzzing phones, endless tabs, flashing headlines, dopamine-driven apps built not to serve you, but to capture you. And yet, we wonder why we feel overwhelmed, why we forget things, why we feel like life is moving too fast. But the issue isn't just speed. It's fragmentation. It's the fact that we've forgotten how to hold our attention, like a candle in the wind. Let me tell you a story. There was a boy named Nathan, 6 years old, curious, imaginative. His teacher noticed something unusual. When Nathan read, the world disappeared. No fidgeting, no distractions, just full, radiant attention. But years later, something changed. Nathan, now 32, couldn't read for more than 5 minutes without grabbing his phone. He came to me and said, I don't feel like myself anymore. I feel scattered, even when I'm alone. I told him something simple, something most people forget. Attention is a muscle. And just like any muscle, it weakens when ignored. But it also strengthens when trained. Mindfulness is that training. It's the practice of noticing when your attention has wandered, and gently, lovingly, bringing it back to your breath, to your hands, to the voice you're hearing right now. This moment is the gym for your attention. Each time you return to it, you get stronger. But why does this matter? Because your attention determines what you feel. Think about it. Focus on stress, you feel overwhelmed. Focus on gratitude, you feel abundant. Focus on lack, you feel empty. Focus on love, and your heart softens. Attention is not just awareness. It's power. And where you aim it, shapes who you become. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. It means your brain rewires itself based on what you repeat. So if you repeatedly focus on fear, your brain becomes better at detecting threat. If you focus on joy, your brain becomes better at noticing beauty. If you focus on what's wrong, your mind will filter the world for more things to worry about. This is not spiritual fluff. This is brain science. And the implications are profound. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you focused, fully, on something that brought you peace? Not just distracted pleasure, but deep peace? Most people can't remember. Not because peace isn't available, but because they haven't trained their attention to stay where peace lives. Let me tell you how Nathan rebuilt his focus. We started small. 5 minutes a day. He chose one object, a candle flame. He'd stare at it, not to hypnotize himself, but to observe. Each time his mind wandered, he gently brought it back. No judgment. No pressure. At first, it was hard. Embarrassingly hard. But within weeks, something shifted. He started noticing things. The smell of morning coffee. The way sunlight touched the floor. The tiny, quiet beauty hiding in plain sight. His mind was coming home. And you can do the same. Here's the practice. Take one moment today. Any moment. And give it your full attention. Not half. Not distracted. Full. Let the moment open itself to you. Let your breath deepen. Let your mind rest. And when it wanders, because it will, smile and return. That return is mindfulness. In the next chapter, we'll explore a deeper layer. Not just attention, but the emotions you bury beneath distraction. The feelings you avoid when you stay busy. But before we move on, ask yourself this. What kind of life could I create if I fully controlled my attention? Chapter 4. The emotions we escape when we stay busy. Let me ask you something. What are you running from when you stay busy? Most people don't think they're running. They think they're managing. Working hard. Staying productive. Being responsible. But busyness, constant busyness, is often a shield. A way to keep yourself from feeling what you've spent years avoiding. Because when the noise dies down, when the screen goes dark, when the last task is done, what's left? Silence. And inside that silence, live the emotions we haven't had the courage to face. Loneliness, guilt, unworthiness, regret, fear. They are there. Not because something is wrong with you, but because you're human. Let me tell you a story. Maria was a single mother of 2. She worked 2 jobs, kept the house spotless, volunteered on weekends. People called her Superwoman. But every night, when she laid in bed, a hollow ache crept in. And no amount of Netflix or scrolling or overthinking could drown it out. When she finally sat with me, her hands trembling, her eyes glassy, she whispered something I'll never forget. If I slow down, I'm afraid everything will catch up to me. What she meant was this. If she stopped moving, she might have to feel. And feeling terrified her more than exhaustion ever did. You may relate. Maybe you've used overworking to avoid grief. Maybe you've used helping others to avoid helping yourself. Maybe you've used perfectionism to protect yourself from pain. That's not weakness. That's survival. It's how your nervous system learned to keep you safe. But here's the truth. You can't heal what you won't feel. And mindfulness, real mindfulness, isn't just about peace. It's about honesty. It's about turning toward discomfort, not away. It's about learning to sit in the dark, without needing to flip on the lights. Let's pause here. This journey may be stirring things within you. If it is, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Someone you love might need to hear this too. Now let's go deeper. You may be wondering, if I stop avoiding these emotions, what happens? Will they overwhelm me? Will I fall apart? Sometimes, yes, but only for a while. Because emotions are not meant to be caged. They're meant to move. They're energy, in motion. When you stop fighting them, they begin to soften. When you give them space, they begin to speak. And what they say might surprise you. Fear might say, I'm trying to keep you from getting hurt again. Anger might say, I'm tired of not being heard. Grief might whisper, I loved something deeply, and I miss it. And shame might simply say, I want to believe I'm enough. Can you hear that? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Mindfulness is not emotional numbness. It's emotional fluency. It's the ability to feel, without being consumed. Let me tell you how Maria changed her life. She began with 10 minutes a day. She'd sit, eyes closed, and simply ask, "What needs to be felt today?" At first, it was a flood. Tears, memories, longings she hadn't let surface in years. But over time, the storm passed. And beneath it all, she found something unexpected. Peace. Not the peace of a silent room, but the peace of inner honesty. The kind that comes when you stop hiding from yourself. Now she moves slower. Not because she's less capable, but because she's more connected. Connected to her breath, to her emotions, to her truth. That's what mindfulness offers. Not escape, but arrival. Not numbing, but knowing. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about the body. The place where all your unspoken emotions live. The quiet messenger you've been taught to ignore. But before we go there, sit with this question. What emotions might be waiting beneath your busyness? Chapter 5. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you listened to your body? Not just checked on it. Not when it was sick. Not when it was sore. But when it was speaking. You see, your body is always talking. But we live in a world that taught us to silence it. Push through. Ignore the ache. Numb the anxiety. Hustle. No matter what. But the truth is, your body holds stories your mind has buried. Every tension, every tight muscle, every shallow breath, is a sentence in the autobiography you've never read. There's a saying in trauma work. The body keeps the score. It means the body stores what the mind can't handle. And it will speak through symptoms when it's not heard through attention. Let me tell you a story. Julian was a firefighter. Strong, stoic, brave. He'd seen things most of us couldn't imagine. But when he retired, he couldn't sleep. Nightmares, panic attacks, sudden chest pains. Doctors found nothing wrong. But Julian knew something inside him was breaking. So we did something unconventional. I asked him to lie down, close his eyes, and scan his body, slowly. "What do you feel?" I asked. He hesitated. Then, softly, "There's a knot in my chest, like something's trapped." We stayed with that knot, breathed into it, listened to it, and then he said something I'll never forget. "I think it's the scream I never let out." That was the moment Julian stopped running. His body had been waiting for him to return. Mindfulness is not just about watching your thoughts. It's about feeling your body. Because healing doesn't happen in your head. It happens when you reconnect to the part of you that was never verbal, but always wise. Your body. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts to certain thoughts? A memory of shame, and your stomach tightens. A thought of loss, and your chest caves in. A flash of fear, and your hands go cold. These are not random sensations. They are messages. And when you learn to listen, you begin to release. Here's a simple practice. Sit still. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Then ask, what does my body want me to feel? Don't analyze. Don't judge. Just listen. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's grief you didn't realize you were carrying. Whatever arises, welcome it. Breathe into it. Let it move. Because that's the truth of emotions stored in the body. They're not asking for explanation. They're asking for space. Let me tell you about Ava. She had chronic migraines. For over a decade. Medications. Therapies. Nothing worked. Until one day, during a somatic mindfulness session, she said, "I feel like I'm carrying the weight of everyone's expectations on my shoulders." We paused. I asked her to sit with that weight. To feel it, not fight it. And for the first time, she cried. Not from pain, but from release. The migraines didn't vanish overnight. But they softened. And more importantly, she stopped abandoning herself to please others. Her body had been trying to protect her all along. So let me ask you again. What is your body trying to tell you? That you're tired? That you're angry? That you need to forgive yourself? Don't wait for it to scream. Listen now, while it's still whispering. In the next chapter, we'll explore breath, the bridge between your mind and your body, the tool you carry with you every second, yet rarely notice. But before we move on, sit with this. The body remembers. Will you remember to listen? Chapter 6. The breath that brought you back. You may not realize it, but the first thing you ever did was breathe. Not speak, not cry, not think. You inhaled. And from that moment on, breath became the rhythm beneath every part of your life. But somewhere along the way, you stopped paying attention to it. Your breath became shallow, rushed, unconscious, and with it, so did your life. Here's the quiet truth most people overlook. Your breath is the only part of your nervous system you can consciously control. And it's the fastest, most powerful way to bring yourself back to the present. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed how you breathe when you're anxious? Fast, tight, high in the chest. And when you're calm, slow, deep, expansive. Breath doesn't just reflect your emotions, it shapes them. Let me tell you a story. Daniel was a war veteran. Tough exterior. Years of survival. But his nights were haunted by panic. He'd wake up gasping, heart racing, soaked in sweat. No matter what he tried, nothing helped. Until he learned one simple thing. How to breathe again. Not just inhale and exhale, but how to use his breath as an anchor. A reset switch. We practiced something called box breathing. 4 seconds in. Hold for 4. 4 seconds out. Hold for 4. At first, it felt silly to him. Childish even. But something happened in week 2. He woke up in panic one night, as usual. But this time, instead of spiraling, he focused on the box. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And for the first time in years, his body calmed, his mind slowed, and he went back to sleep. Here's the truth. The breath is a bridge between your body and your mind, between chaos and calm, between reaction and choice. It doesn't require belief. It just requires practice. Let's pause for a moment. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Now take a deep breath, slowly. Which hand moved more? If it's your chest, you're breathing shallow. If it's your belly, you're grounded. This is not small. It's everything. Shallow breath keeps you in survival. Deep breath brings you into safety. And safety is where healing begins. There's a reason almost every meditation, yoga session, and therapy session starts with breathwork. Because breath is the entry point, the reset button, the forgotten key to peace. Let me ask you something. How many of your worst decisions happened when you were holding your breath? The argument you escalated, the text you regretted, the fear you gave into. Now imagine if, in those moments, you had taken just one mindful breath. Inhale clarity. Exhale reactivity. Would things have turned out differently? They might have. And that's the power of mindful breathing. Not to erase pain, but to pause in the middle of it. Not to fix everything, but to find your center, even when everything feels off balance. Let me share something else Daniel discovered. He began using breath not just in panic, but in daily life. Before difficult conversations. Before meetings. Even before hugging his children. Because breath, he realized, doesn't just bring calm. It brings presence. And presence is the most generous thing you can offer. To others. To the world. To yourself. So today, start simple. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Repeat. Gently. Lovingly. Let the breath bring you back. In the next chapter, we'll explore one of the hardest, but most liberating, skills of mindfulness. Letting go. But before we turn the page, ask yourself this. What would your life feel like if you let your breath lead? Chapter 7. The art of letting go without losing yourself. Let me ask you something. What are you still holding on to that no longer holds you. Maybe it's a grudge, a wound, a version of yourself that doesn't fit anymore. Maybe it's someone who left, or someone who stayed too long. Whatever it is, it's heavy. And mindfulness begins when you learn to feel the weight of what you carry, and then slowly begin to release. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means loosening your grip on the past, so the present can breathe. But letting go is hard, isn't it? Because holding on feels like control. It feels like safety. It feels like proof that what happened mattered. And sometimes, it feels like if you let go, you'll disappear too. But here's the truth. You don't disappear when you let go. You reappear. You come back to yourself. Let me tell you a story. Nina was 40, recently divorced. 2 kids. A house full of memories that now felt more like ghosts. She held on tightly to the story of what should have been. To the hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd come back. To the belief that letting go meant failure. She told me, "I don't want to forget the good parts." I said, "You don't have to forget the good. You just have to stop reliving the pain." Mindfulness helped her separate the memory from the meaning. She learned to watch her thoughts without becoming them. She learned to feel her grief without drowning in it. And slowly, something softened. The memories didn't vanish, but they stopped owning her. Letting go is not a moment. It's a practice. It happens in small decisions. To stop rereading old texts. To stop replaying the last conversation. To stop punishing yourself for not knowing better. It's the moment you choose peace over proof. Healing over history. Presence over perfection. You may be wondering, how do I let go of something that hurts so deeply? You begin by feeling it fully. The pain, the anger, the longing. You let it rise. You sit with it. You breathe into it. And then, you stop feeding it. Because pain needs attention to survive. And when you starve the story, the wound begins to close. Let's pause here. If this message is helping you release something you've held too long, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share the channel. You never know who else needs this freedom. Now, let's go deeper. There's a false belief that letting go means giving up. But that's not true. Letting go means you're strong enough to live without clinging. That you trust life enough to move forward, even if you don't know what's next. Letting go is the most courageous form of faith. Because it says, I believe there's something beyond this pain. I believe I can build again. I believe I am more than what broke me. Let me tell you what Nina did next. She turned her pain into presence. She started journaling every morning, not about him, but about her. Who she was. What she wanted. What brought her joy. She planted new flowers in her garden. Painted the bedroom. Started laughing again. She didn't erase the past. She just stopped living there. And little by little, she came back to life. That's the quiet miracle of letting go. You don't wake up one day healed. You wake up one day no longer ruled by the wound. And that is everything. In the next chapter, we'll talk about self-compassion. The way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. The quiet tone that shapes your entire world. But before we go there, ask yourself gently, what would it feel like to finally let go? Chapter 8. The way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. Let me ask you something. If someone spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would you consider them kind? Most people don't realize how cruel their inner voice has become. Not because they're bad people, but because they've gotten used to self-criticism. They think it's normal to wake up already feeling behind, to look in the mirror and see flaws, to make a mistake and call themselves stupid, to fall short and feel like they are the failure. But let me be clear, that voice? It isn't the truth. It's a habit. And habits can be broken. Here's what most people misunderstand. Self-compassion is not weakness. It's not laziness. It's not self-pity. It's strength. It's the decision, moment by moment, to treat yourself like someone you love. Even when you fall. Especially when you fall. Let me tell you a story. Jared was a high-performing athlete. Disciplined, tough, driven. But inside, he was brutal with himself. Every mistake felt like proof he wasn't good enough. Every shortcoming echoed in his head like a siren. He came to mindfulness not to find peace, but because the pressure had broken him. What we discovered together was this. He had mistaken self-criticism for motivation. He thought tearing himself down would build him up, but it was slowly destroying his confidence, his sleep, and his sense of self-worth. So I asked him, what if you spoke to yourself like you would to a friend who was hurting? He paused, and then he whispered, I wouldn't speak to anyone the way I speak to myself. That was his turning point. He began practicing what we call inner reparenting. Whenever he made a mistake, he'd place a hand on his heart and say, you're allowed to be human. You're still worthy. You don't have to earn your right to be gentle. At first, it felt awkward, fake, even. But over time, his nervous system began to relax. His focus sharpened, and his performance actually improved. Not because he pushed harder, but because he stopped pushing himself off the edge. Here's the truth. Your nervous system doesn't respond well to shame, but it thrives on safety. And you can be that safety for yourself. Let's pause for a moment. Think of a recent moment when you messed up. Now ask yourself, how did I speak to myself afterward? Did I punish? Or did I comfort? Did I rush to fix? Or did I pause to feel? That inner tone matters, because it becomes the atmosphere you live in. Mindfulness invites you to notice that voice, to soften it, to transform it. One breath, one word, at a time. Let me ask you, what if the next time you felt like a failure, you said, I'm still learning. I'm allowed to grow. This doesn't define me. Not to avoid accountability, but to avoid cruelty. There's a Buddhist practice called metta. It means loving kindness. It starts with a simple phrase, repeated silently. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. And here's the power of it. When you speak to yourself with kindness, you begin to expect kindness from the world. You set a new standard, internally and externally. Let me tell you how Jared lives now. He still trains. He still pushes himself. But now, he rests when he needs to. He speaks gently when he falls short. And he's more resilient, not less, because of it. That's the paradox of compassion. It doesn't make you soft. It makes you stronger, from the inside out. In the next chapter, we'll talk about boundaries. How to protect your peace, without guilt. How to say no from a place of self-respect, not fear. But before we go there, let me leave you with this question. What would change in your life if you became your own best friend? Chapter 9. Boundaries are bridges back to yourself. Let me ask you something. When you say yes to others, how often are you saying no to yourself? We tend to think of boundaries as walls. Cold, isolating, unkind. But real boundaries aren't barriers. They are bridges. They lead you back to your peace, your truth, your center. A boundary isn't something you build to push others away. It's something you place to protect your energy, so that what matters most can stay sacred. But here's the struggle. We're taught that kindness means self-abandonment. That saying yes makes you good. That saying no makes you selfish. So we stretch ourselves thin. We say yes while our gut screams no. We stay in conversations that drain us. We take on tasks that crush us. And then, we burn out. But mindfulness teaches us to tune into the body. To notice that slight clenching in your jaw when someone crosses a line. The fatigue that hits after people-pleasing. The resentment that grows after one too many silent sacrifices. Let me tell you a story. Sophia was a therapist. She listened to pain all day long, gave every ounce of her energy to clients, co-workers, even friends. But at night, she would collapse, emotionally numb and silently screaming inside. She said, I love helping people, but I feel like I'm disappearing. That's the sign. When your kindness erases you, it's no longer kindness. It's a cry for permission to reclaim yourself. I told Sophia something simple. You're not a bad person for needing space. You're a whole person for honoring your limits. That was the beginning of her healing. She started small. 5-minute pauses between sessions. Phone off after 8 p.m. One full day a week where she didn't carry anyone else's emotions but her own. The guilt came, of course. But so did something else. Clarity, strength, and eventually, peace. Let's pause here. You may feel guilt when you start setting boundaries. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. Let's be clear. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not revenge. They're not manipulation. They are clear expressions of what you need in order to stay whole. And guess what? People who love you will honor that. People who don't will resist it. And that's okay. Because boundaries don't just reveal your needs. They reveal who's willing to respect them. Let me ask you, where in your life are you constantly saying yes, when your body wants to scream no? Is it a job? A relationship? A conversation you've outgrown? Start there. Write it down. Acknowledge it. Then ask, what would protecting my peace look like here? You don't need to make dramatic announcements. You don't need to cut people off in rage. You just need one quiet, steady truth. I matter too. Let me tell you what happened with Sophia. She became more available, not less. Because her presence was no longer spread thin. It was rooted, intentional, whole. And the people around her noticed. They didn't lose her. They got more of her. The real her. The centered her. The version of her that knew how to pour, without going empty. That's what boundaries give you. A life where your energy isn't scattered, but sacred. In the next chapter, we'll explore presence in relationships. How to connect more deeply with others and yourself. How to be fully with someone, without losing who you are. But before we go there, let me ask you one last question. What part of your peace are you ready to protect? Chapter 10. How to be with others without losing yourself. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt completely drained? You were there. You smiled. You nodded. You listened. But something inside you felt like it had quietly vanished. That's what happens when we show up for others without staying connected to ourselves. Mindful living doesn't mean isolating. It means relating with awareness. It means being fully with others, while staying rooted in you. There's a misconception in the world of connection. That love means merging. That empathy means absorbing. That presence means abandoning your own needs to meet someone else's. But here's the truth. Presence in relationships isn't about losing yourself. It's about bringing yourself. The whole you. Not just the agreeable version. Not just the one who avoids conflict. Not just the shapeshifter who fits into every room, yet leaves every room feeling invisible. Let me tell you a story. David was the kind of friend everyone depended on. The emotional anchor. The fixer. The one who showed up, no matter what. But in private, he felt empty. He said, I feel like people love the version of me that serves them. Not the one that struggles. Not the one that has needs. That is a loneliness few talk about. The loneliness of being surrounded, but not seen. So we practiced something new together. Something most people rarely do. Relational mindfulness. It starts with one simple awareness. Am I present with this person, and also present with myself? You can try it right now. Think of someone you spend time with. Now ask, do I feel free to be real with them? Do I leave those moments feeling more connected or more depleted? If the answer is depletion, you're not failing them. You're forgetting you. Let's pause for a moment. Presence in relationships is not just about attention. It's about authenticity. It's about telling the truth, gently, setting boundaries, lovingly, and honoring your energy, even when it's hard. Here's something we practiced with David. Before every conversation, he'd ask himself 3 questions. What am I feeling right now? What do I need in this interaction? Am I abandoning myself to keep the peace? That alone changed everything. He started speaking up when something didn't feel right. He stopped overextending to fix others' emotions. He began to share his truth, not just his support. And guess what? The right people stayed. They loved him more, not less, for being whole. The wrong people drifted. And that was a gift in disguise. Because here's the truth. If someone only values the version of you that suppresses your truth, they're not valuing you, they're valuing your silence. Mindfulness in relationships means staying awake. Awake to the energy exchange. Awake to your triggers. Awake to the patterns you repeat. Awake to the quiet moments when your body says enough, even while your mouth says okay. Let me share something else we taught David. Sacred pause. During hard conversations, instead of reacting, he'd pause. Breathe. Reconnect to his body. Then respond. That pause saved him from spiraling. That pause brought clarity. That pause, tiny as it was a revolution. Because it said, I don't have to lose myself to stay close. And neither do you. So next time you're with someone, stay present. Not just to them. To you. What's rising in your chest? What's tightening in your throat? What's softening in your heart? That's mindfulness in motion. In the next chapter, we'll dive into stillness. Not silence, but stillness. The rare, powerful state of being, where nothing needs to happen, and that is enough. But before we go there, ask yourself this. Who do I become when I'm trying to be enough for someone else? And who would I be if I stayed true to myself, even in their presence? Chapter 11. In the stillness, everything speaks. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did nothing? Not watched. Not scrolled. Not planned. Not recharged by consuming more content. I mean truly nothing. Just Saturday. Breathed. Existed. Most people can't remember. Because we've been taught that stillness is useless. That silence is empty. That doing nothing is a waste of time. But here's the truth. Stillness is not the absence of life. It's where life reveals itself. It's the mirror. The reset button. The quiet space where truth can finally echo without distortion. Stillness is not passive. It's active awareness. It's the place where clarity rises. Only when you stop chasing answers. Let me tell you a story. Malik was a tech entrepreneur. Fast-paced. Hyper-productive. He scheduled every minute of his day. Even his relaxation time came with a checklist. He came to mindfulness as a last resort. Not because he believed in it, but because he was burning out. Fast. We started with 5 minutes of stillness. No phone. No task. Just breath and being. After the first session, he opened his eyes and said, "That was the longest 5 minutes of my life." Stillness felt unbearable. Because for the first time, there was nothing to distract him from him. But day by day, he returned. And in the stillness, he heard something surprising. He heard exhaustion. He heard grief. He heard a quiet, buried desire to slow down. And that was the beginning of his transformation. Because the stillness didn't make him weak. It made him honest. That's what it does. Stillness doesn't show you a curated version of yourself. It shows you the real one. The tired one. The hopeful one. The one waiting beneath all the noise. Let's pause together. Right now. Take one slow, conscious breath. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Did you feel that? That tiny moment was stillness. And in that moment, your nervous system softened. Your thoughts quieted. Your presence deepened. That's what we forget. Stillness isn't about sitting on a mountain in silence for hours. It's about finding space. Inside, even in the middle of chaos. You can find it between meetings. While doing the dishes. During a walk. Or in the 30 seconds before you respond to a triggering text. Stillness is portable. It's always with you. But you have to choose it. Let me ask you. What are you afraid you'll feel if everything suddenly went quiet? That's the place mindfulness wants to take you. Not to punish you, but to free you. Because in that stillness, you meet the only person who can truly heal you. You. Let me share what changed for Malik. He stopped overscheduling. He created white space in his calendar, unplanned, untouchable time. He started walking without headphones, driving without podcasts, eating without screens. And in those moments, he began hearing something sacred. His own wisdom. Ideas came more clearly. Decisions felt less forced. His body felt lighter. His stress, quieter. He wasn't doing less. He was living more. Here's what I want you to remember. Stillness is not inactivity. It's intentional non-doing. It's saying, I don't need to earn this breath. I don't need to fill this moment. It's already enough. And so are you. In the next chapter, we'll dive into resilience. Not the kind that comes from pushing through, but the kind that grows when you learn how to bend without breaking. But before we go there, ask yourself, what might I hear if I gave myself permission to be still? Chapter 12. The strength that comes from softness. Let me ask you something. When you think of resilience, what comes to mind? Grit? Toughness? A soldier standing tall in the middle of the storm? That's what most of us were taught. That resilience means hardening, means fighting, means never letting them see you break. But here's what mindfulness reveals. True resilience is not about staying hard. It's about learning how to stay open, even when it hurts. It's not about never falling. It's about how gently you rise. Let me tell you a story. Rachel was a nurse during the height of a global health crisis. Day after day, she watched people suffer. Some she saved. Many she didn't. Her co-workers called her strong. But inside, she was unraveling. One night, she broke down and said to me, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending I'm okay. That's when I told her something most people never hear. Softness is not the opposite of strength. It's the source of it. Resilience isn't the ability to suppress your pain. It's the willingness to feel it and still return to love. Rachel began practicing emotional mindfulness. Each night, she would ask herself 3 simple questions. What emotion am I avoiding? Where do I feel it in my body? What does this emotion need from me right now? At first, it was overwhelming. She cried more in that first week than she had in the past year. But slowly, the crying gave way to clarity, to breath, to healing. Her resilience didn't come from resisting the weight of her world. It came from releasing it. Let's pause for a moment. You've likely been told to stay strong. But what if strength isn't in the armor, but in the surrender? What if the bravest thing you can do today is admit you're tired? Resilience is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up again. Even when you're uncertain. Even when yesterday broke you. Even when you carry grief in your back and courage in your chest. It's about staying in the room, with your emotions, without running. Let me ask you, what do you believe will happen if you finally allow yourself to break? Do you think you'll stay broken? Fall apart forever? Because here's what's more likely. You'll rise softer, wiser, stronger. Not because you never cracked, but because you did, and still chose to return. Let me share something powerful Rachel learned. She created a ritual. After every shift, she'd sit quietly for 5 minutes. She wouldn't scroll. She wouldn't vent. She'd simply put a hand on her chest and breathe. Each exhale was a soft release of what she carried. Each inhale was a quiet return to herself. She wasn't erasing the pain. She was allowing it to pass through her, instead of letting it stay stuck. That's what resilient people do. They feel deeply, but they don't let feelings define them. They fall, but they rise with more empathy. They don't suppress their suffering. They stay with it, long enough for it to transform into wisdom. So let me ask you, right now, what are you carrying that's too heavy to hold alone? You don't have to harden to keep going. You can soften and still move forward. You can rest and still rebuild. You can cry and still be strong. In the next chapter, we'll talk about gratitude. Not the kind that feels forced or fake, but the kind that reshapes how you see the world, even in its darkest moments. But before we go there, sit with this. What if your softness was the beginning of your greatest strength? Chapter 13. The kind of gratitude that changes everything. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly grateful? Not because you were told to, but because something inside you just paused and whispered, "This moment is enough." Gratitude is one of the most misunderstood practices in mindfulness. People think it's about pretending everything is okay, about forcing a smile when your world is falling apart, about listing blessings while burying your pain. But real gratitude is different. It's not denial. It's awareness. It's the quiet decision to see what's still here, even in the middle of what's missing. It doesn't ignore the darkness. It just remembers the light. Let me tell you a story. Carla had just lost her father. Suddenly. No warning. No goodbyes. The grief came in waves. Some days numb, some days drowning. She said, "I can't be grateful right now. I can barely breathe." And I told her, "That's okay. You don't have to force gratitude. But when you're ready, it might find you on its own." 2 weeks later, she sent me a message. It was a photo of sunlight hitting the dining room table. The same table where her father used to sit every morning with coffee. She wrote, "I miss him, but today the light felt warm. And for a moment, I was thankful. Not for the pain, but for the memory." That is true gratitude. Not forced, not manufactured, but discovered. It appears when you become still enough to notice the beauty that never stopped being there. You just couldn't see it through the storm. Let's pause for a moment. Gratitude isn't about ignoring pain. It's about expanding your view. When you're overwhelmed, your attention narrows. You see only what's wrong, only what's missing, only what hurts. But when you practice mindful gratitude, your lens widens. You begin to notice the softness of your pillow, the steadiness of your breath, the quiet way the world keeps turning, even after your heart has cracked. And something shifts. You don't stop grieving, but you stop drowning. You float. You breathe. You remember, life is still here. Let me ask you, what if gratitude didn't have to be grand? What if it could live in small things? The first sip of tea. The way your dog greets you at the door. The moment of silence before sunrise. This isn't toxic positivity. This is sacred noticing. And it's backed by science. Research shows that practicing gratitude rewires your brain. It increases dopamine, boosts serotonin, lowers stress. It literally trains your mind to look for what's working, instead of obsessing over what's broken. But like all mindfulness, it's a practice. Let me tell you what Carla started doing. Every night, she wrote down one thing she was grateful for. Not 5, not 10, just one. Some nights, it was simple. My favorite song came on. I slept through the night. A stranger smiled at me today. And other nights, it was more complex. I cried and let myself be held. Over time, these small moments became her lifeline. She still grieved. She still missed her father. But she no longer felt like life had stopped. She started seeing again, feeling again, living again. So let me offer you something simple. Right now, breathe gently and ask yourself, what is one small thing I'm grateful for in this exact moment? Don't overthink it. Don't reach for the profound. Maybe it's this breath. Maybe it's this stillness. Maybe it's the fact that you're still here. In the next chapter, we'll talk about purpose. Not as a destination you must discover, but as a quiet rhythm you return to, daily, intentionally, mindfully. But before we go there, ask yourself this. What would your life feel like if you learned to see even the smallest joys as sacred? Chapter 14. Purpose isn't found, it's lived. Let me ask you something. Have you ever asked yourself, what's my purpose? And felt an overwhelming silence in response? Most people do. Because we've been told that purpose is something we need to find. Like a treasure buried deep in some distant future. Something we're either born knowing, or destined to chase forever. But here's the truth mindfulness offers. Purpose isn't found. It's lived. It's not a job title. Not a single passion. Not a spotlight moment where the heavens part and everything makes sense. Purpose is quieter than that. Simpler. More human. It's how you show up. How you choose. How you breathe into this moment with presence. Let me tell you a story. Miles was 55. He had spent decades building a successful business. One day, he sold it. And the next morning, woke up feeling lost. He said, "I thought when I had freedom, I'd feel fulfilled. But now I don't know who I am without the job." He wasn't grieving the business. He was grieving the identity he had tied to it. So I asked him, "What made you feel most alive while running it?" He thought for a while, then smiled and said, "Mentoring younger employees. Helping them believe in themselves." That was it. That was purpose. Not the business. The being. The heart. The contribution. The presence. Purpose isn't what you do. It's how you do it. It's who you are when no one's watching, and who others become because of you. Let's pause for a moment. You may think you need to figure out your purpose before you live with intention. But what if living with intention is your purpose? What if presence is the path? Mindfulness teaches us that purpose is not a destination. It's a direction. A way of walking. You can find it in the way you listen, without interrupting. In the way you greet a stranger, with warmth. In the way you love others, and yourself, with patience and care. Let me ask you, what if your purpose is already here? Hidden in the life you keep rushing past? What if it's in how you care for your children? How you hold space for someone's pain? How you speak truth, even when it trembles? Let me tell you how Miles rebuilt his life. He started volunteering, just once a week. No business plans. No profits. Just presence. He mentored students at a local community center. And each time he left, he'd say, "I feel more myself here than I ever did in the boardroom." Because purpose lives where your soul feels at home. Where time disappears. Where the smallest act feels like something sacred. You don't have to change careers to live with purpose. You just have to be awake to what matters. Let me offer you a practice. Each morning, before you check your phone, ask, "How can I live with purpose today?" It might be as small as speaking kindly to yourself, or reaching out to someone you love, or simply noticing beauty and letting yourself feel it. And at night, ask, "What felt meaningful today?" Not what was productive, not what earned praise. What felt true? The more you ask, the more your life starts to shift. Not toward perfection, but toward depth. In the next chapter, we'll explore forgiveness. Not for others, but for you. The kind of forgiveness that frees the parts of you still stuck in yesterday's shame. But before we go there, sit with this. What if purpose isn't something out there to find, but something inside you, waiting to be lived? Chapter 15. The Quiet Freedom of Forgiving Yourself. Let me ask you something. What memory still makes you wince when you think about it? That one decision. That one moment. That one version of you you'd rather forget. We all have them. Moments we wish we could rewrite. Words we wish we could unsay. Paths we wish we never took. And somewhere inside, we carry the belief that we don't deserve peace until we've punished ourselves enough. But here's the truth. Self-forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about releasing who you no longer are. It's about saying, "Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I hurt myself or someone else. Yes, I would do things differently now. But I refuse to chain my present to a version of me who didn't yet know better." Let me tell you a story. Thomas was a recovering addict. Clean for 3 years. Working. Thriving. Showing up for his family. But he still couldn't sleep at night. He told me, "It's like a movie in my mind I can't turn off. All the things I did. All the people I hurt." He believed that to truly change, he had to hate who he used to be. But what he didn't see was that the shame was keeping him stuck. Because shame doesn't lead to transformation. It leads to paralysis. What he needed was compassion. So I asked him to try something new. Instead of replaying the same regretful story, I asked him to place a hand on his chest and say, I was doing the best I could with the awareness I had. I see my pain. I see my growth. And I'm allowed to heal. At first, it made him cry. Then, it made him breathe deeper. And eventually, it made him free. Let's pause for a moment. What is the version of you you've been punishing the longest? The teenager who was reckless? The adult who ignored the red flags? The you who hurt someone because you didn't know how to speak your truth? That version of you is not your enemy. It's your younger self. Your wounded self. The one who was surviving the best way they could. Self-forgiveness is not a pass. It's a process. It's saying, I am not proud of everything I've done, but I am committed to becoming someone I can be proud of now. Let me ask you, how long will you carry this weight before you lay it down? You've suffered enough. You've replayed the scene 1,000 times. You've punished yourself in silence. What if healing begins with acceptance, not more shame? Let me share something Thomas did every morning. Before his feet touched the floor, he whispered, I forgive myself for what I did when I didn't know how to cope. I thank myself for surviving. And I promise to choose better today. That one ritual rewired his entire nervous system. He walked lighter, spoke gentler, loved more honestly. Because when you forgive yourself, you stop trying to prove your worth. You start living from it. And that is liberation. Here's the practice. Write a letter, not from your present self to your past self, but from your future self to your present. Let it say, I'm proud of you. I see your efforts. I trust where you're going. That's the voice you need right now. Not the inner critic. The inner witness. The part of you that sees both the wound and the warrior. In the next chapter, we'll talk about trusting life again. How to stay open when things feel uncertain. How to rebuild faith, not in guarantees, but in your ability to handle whatever comes. But before we go there, ask yourself this. What part of me is still waiting for permission to finally let go of the past? And can I offer that permission today? Chapter 16. Learning to trust life again. Let me ask you something. What do you do when everything feels uncertain? When the plan unravels? When the relationship ends? When life doesn't go the way you thought it would? For most people, the answer is, tighten up. Control more. Predict everything. Grasp for certainty like a lifeline. But the more we try to control life, the more we suffer. Because life, by its nature, is uncertain. And mindfulness doesn't remove that uncertainty. It teaches you how to live inside it, without losing your peace. It shows you how to replace control with trust. Not blind trust. Not naive hope. But deep, embodied trust in your own capacity to respond. Let me tell you a story. Yanel lost her job unexpectedly. A career she'd built for 15 years disappeared in a single phone call. She panicked. Not just about the money, but about her identity. If I'm not that, who am I? She spiraled into what ifs. What if I can't find anything else? What if I never feel stable again? What if this ruins everything? That's what fear does. It builds futures that haven't happened, and makes you live inside them. So I asked her a question that shifted everything. What if, instead of needing to trust the plan, you trusted yourself to meet whatever comes? She paused, then said quietly, I don't know how to do that. So we began, slowly. Each morning, she wrote down one thing she had handled in the past. One storm she survived. One moment she showed up anyway. She began building a new kind of evidence. Not that everything would go perfectly, but that she could handle it even when it didn't. That is real trust. Not in life going your way, but in your ability to stay present when it doesn't. Let's pause together. Place a hand over your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe deep. Now whisper to yourself. I trust myself to respond, even if I don't yet know how. That is enough. That is everything. Here's what mindfulness teaches. You don't need to know every answer. You just need to know how to return to your breath. to stay awake, to feel, to adjust. Because life is not a straight line. It's a river. And trust is learning to float. Let me ask you, what are you gripping so tightly? Because you're afraid of what happens if you let go? That job? That timeline? That old version of success? What if letting go isn't loss, but alignment? Yanel eventually found new work, something different. Less prestigious on paper, but far more fulfilling in her soul. She told me, I didn't just find a new job. I found a new rhythm. I'm not chasing anymore. I'm living. And that shift came, not from fixing life, but from trusting herself inside of it. Here's the practice. Each time fear rises, ask, what is the next loving step I can take, right now? Not the perfect step. Not the final answer. Just the next loving step. Maybe it's a breath. A call. A pause. A choice to sleep instead of spiral. Trust is built in tiny moments. One breath. One step. One brave surrender at a time. In the next chapter, we'll explore presence in the ordinary. How to make daily life, mundane, repetitive, simple moments, your sacred ground for mindfulness. But before we go there, sit with this. What would life feel like if you trusted it enough to stop grasping and start flowing? Chapter 17. Finding Sacredness in the Ordinary. Let me ask you something. How many moments do you pass through, just trying to get to the next? The dishes, the commute, folding laundry, waiting in line. We rush through them, half aware, half alive, always chasing the next big thing. The breakthrough, the milestone, the moment that finally makes everything feel worth it. But here's the truth mindfulness teaches us, quietly, gently. Most of life is the ordinary. And if you don't learn to find presence there, you'll miss your whole life waiting for something more. Let me tell you a story. Oliver was a writer. Brilliant, creative, but constantly restless. He was always chasing the next idea, the next book, the next high of inspiration. One day, he came to me frustrated. I have everything I thought I wanted, he said, but I still feel empty. So I asked him, when was the last time you made tea, and just made tea? He blinked. What do you mean? I said, not while scrolling, not while thinking, not while rushing, just tea, just presence. He shook his head. I don't know if I've ever done that. That became his practice. Every morning, he made a single cup of tea, mindfully. He watched the steam rise, listened to the kettle sing, felt the warmth in his hands, sipped slowly. He said it felt silly at first, pointless. But a few weeks in, something shifted. He said, it's like the tea started tasting more alive. Or maybe I started feeling more alive. That is the power of sacred ordinary. When you bring presence to the smallest things, they become portals. Portals to peace, to wonder, to awe. Because presence isn't about the what. It's about the how. How you show up, how you notice, how you breathe through what once felt invisible. Let's pause right now. What are your hands doing? What does the air feel like on your skin? What background sounds are you just now beginning to hear? You didn't have to go anywhere new to find this moment. You just had to arrive. That's the invitation. To stop treating ordinary moments as obstacles on the way to something greater. And start honoring them as life itself. Let me ask you, what if the way you wash your hands could become a meditation? What if folding clothes could be an act of care, not a chore? What if making your bed could become a declaration? I honor this space. I honor this life. That's not sentimentality. That's reverence. And reverence is the soul of mindful living. Let me share what Oliver discovered next. He began to write less, but with more depth. He took more walks, fewer deadlines. And for the first time, he said, I feel like my life is no longer rushing past me. Because he wasn't chasing meaning anymore. He was making it. With each breath, each pause, each small moment he used to overlook. Here's your practice. Choose one ordinary thing you do every day. brushing your teeth, washing a plate, walking to the mailbox. And for one day, do it as if it was sacred. Breathe. Notice. Slow down. Let the moment show you what it's been holding all along. In the next chapter, we'll talk about living aligned with your values. How to make mindful choices that reflect who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. But before we go there, ask yourself this. What if life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be meaningful? What if the meaning is already here, waiting to be seen? Chapter 18. Choosing a life that aligns with your soul. Let me ask you something. Are you living your life, or the life someone else expected from you? It's a hard question, because the drift away from our values doesn't happen in one big leap. It happens in tiny compromises. Little yeses when you meant no. Subtle silences when you wanted to speak. And over time, you wake up wondering why your life feels full, yet hollow. Mindfulness asks us to return, not just to the present moment, but to what matters most. Because living mindfully isn't just about breathing slowly or being calm. It's about alignment. It's about making choices, big and small, that reflect your truth. Let me tell you a story. Leah was a corporate lawyer. Sharp, respected, successful. But she came to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Every day I win, I feel like I'm losing myself." She wasn't unhappy because she lacked success. She was unhappy because her success had come at the cost of her values. She loved justice, but her work had become about winning cases she didn't believe in. She loved community, but her hours left her isolated. She loved creativity, but she hadn't written a poem in 7 years. We didn't start with a career change. We started with clarity. I asked her, "What are your core values?" She paused, then whispered, "I don't remember." That's where so many people are. Not lost, just disconnected. So we made a list. Truth, connection, integrity, rest, joy. Then we asked the deeper question. Where in your life are your actions out of alignment with these values? That question was the mirror. And she didn't look away. Let's pause for a moment. Grab a pen. Or just reflect silently. What are your core values? Not the ones you think sound good. Not the ones you were raised with. The ones that make you feel alive. The ones you defend, even if no one else agreed. Now ask yourself, where am I living with them? Where am I living without them? Mindfulness is not about judgment. It's about awareness. And once you see the gap, you get to choose, lovingly, courageously, how to close it. Here's something Leah began doing. Every Sunday, she planned her week around her values. Not just her tasks, her truths. If she valued connection, she made time for a slow meal with a friend. If she valued creativity, she wrote, even just one paragraph. If she valued rest, she blocked out space to breathe. Little by little, her life began to feel like hers again. Eventually, yes, she left the firm. But not out of anger. Out of clarity. She wasn't running away. She was walking home. That's what alignment feels like. Like coming home to yourself. Let me ask you this. What part of your life looks successful on the outside, but feels misaligned on the inside? You don't have to blow it all up. You just have to listen. One breath. One value. One honest choice at a time. Here's your practice. Each morning, ask, what would it look like to live 1 inch closer to my truth today? Not 10 steps. Not a total reinvention. Just 1 inch. Maybe it's saying no. Maybe it's speaking up. Maybe it's finally making space for what you really want. That 1 inch matters. Because alignment isn't a destination. It's a daily devotion. In the next chapter, we'll explore the mindful end of each day. How to wind down not just your body, but your spirit. How to let go of the day with peace, instead of dragging it into your dreams. But before we go there, sit with this. Are you living from your values, or from your fears? And what would change if you let your soul lead? Chapter 19. How to end the day without carrying it into tomorrow. Let me ask you something. How do you end your day? Not just what time you sleep. Not whether you watch a show or scroll until your eyes close. I mean, how do you land? Do you drop into rest gently, or collapse into it with your mind still racing? Because here's something we rarely talk about. How you end your day shapes how you meet the next. Most of us carry the weight of our days into the night. Unfinished conversations, lingering tension, unspoken self-criticism. It piles up, and then we wonder why we wake up tired, even after a full night's sleep. Mindful living doesn't stop when the sun sets. It softens. It invites you to close each day with intention. Let me tell you a story. Ben was a father of 3. Worked full-time. Showed up for everyone. But every night, he'd fall asleep with his phone in hand and tension in his chest. He told me, "I go to bed exhausted and wake up feeling like I never rested." I asked him, "Do you have a nighttime ritual?" He laughed. "Just crash and repeat." So we built one. Not elaborate, just sacred. Each night, before bed, Ben did 3 things. 1 breath of release. He'd sit quietly, inhale deeply, then exhale slowly, imagining the day leaving his body with his breath. 1 sentence of compassion. Whatever went wrong, whatever he didn't finish, he'd say, "I did my best today, and that's enough." 1 moment of presence. No phone, no noise, just stillness. A few breaths. A candle. A sense of being, not doing. It changed everything. His sleep deepened. His mood softened. And his mornings no longer felt like recovery, but renewal. Let's pause here. What do you need in order to truly rest? Not just physically, but emotionally? Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's letting go of a thought that's not serving you. Maybe it's remembering you don't have to solve everything tonight. Rest is not earned. It's your birthright. You're allowed to lay down the weight. Even if the to-do list isn't done. Even if the day wasn't perfect. Mindfulness says, "Come as you are. End this day not with pressure, but peace." Let me ask you, what if you gave yourself a closing ritual? Not to be productive, but to honor the human you were today. Here's a simple practice. Before sleep, whisper to yourself, "I release this day. I release control. I welcome rest." And if your mind won't let go, place a hand on your heart. Breathe deeply. Say, "It's okay to be here. It's okay to be still." You may not solve everything by midnight, but you can create a space inside yourself where peace is possible. Let me share how Ben lives now. He still works hard. Still shows up for his family. But he ends each day not with burnout, but with gratitude. He thanks himself, not for being perfect, but for being present. That's the shift. You don't need more time. You need more presence inside the time you already have. In the next and final chapter, we'll explore what it means to begin again. To live not as someone chasing mindfulness, but as someone embodying it. But before we go there, ask yourself this. What part of today can I release, so I can rest with nothing left to prove? Chapter 20. The courage to begin again. Let me ask you something. What if today, you gave yourself permission to begin again? No matter how long you felt stuck. No matter how far you think you've drifted. No matter what the voice in your head still says about what you should have done by now. What if the path home didn't begin with perfection, but with a single, mindful breath? Because that's what mindfulness is, at its core. The gentle, radical art of beginning again. Again after you forget. Again after you fall back into old habits. Again after you lose your temper, miss your morning practice, abandon your peace. Mindful living is not about getting it right all the time. It's about returning. And that return is always possible. Let me tell you a story. Arya was a meditation teacher. People came to her for peace, wisdom, grounding. But what they didn't know was that she often struggled to follow her own teachings. She'd wake up anxious. She'd forget to breathe. She'd lose her presence, especially when life got loud. She once said to me, "Sometimes I feel like a fraud." I smiled, and I told her, no one is immune to the human experience. The practice isn't in never forgetting. The practice is in always returning. That became her mantra. I can begin again. And every time she lost herself, she whispered it like a prayer. No shame, no judgment, just a quiet choosing to come back. That's the heart of this chapter, and the soul of this entire book. Every chapter you've listened to, every breath, every moment of awareness. It wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you already are. Present, worthy, whole, even in the mess. Especially in the mess. Let's pause. One last time. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel it enter. Feel it leave. You're here. Not tomorrow. Not yesterday. Now. And now is always enough. So what does it mean to begin again? It means waking up with compassion. Living your values, not perfectly, but intentionally. Letting go of yesterday's noise. Tuning back into today's truth. It means noticing, without blaming. Breathing, without forcing. Loving, without needing to fix. Let me ask you, where in your life have you been waiting? Waiting to feel ready? Waiting to feel whole enough? Disciplined enough? Clear enough? What if readiness isn't something you feel before you start, but something you build by starting? Today is enough. This breath is enough. You are enough. Let me share how Arya lives now. She still forgets. She still drifts. But she doesn't spiral. She breathes, returns, and keeps going, with grace. She tells her students, the goal isn't to be perfect at mindfulness. The goal is to live mindfully, as best you can, one moment at a time. And now, so can you. This is your invitation. Not to chase a new version of yourself, but to meet yourself, again and again, with softness. To pause, to feel, to breathe, to choose, to begin again. Every morning, every breath, every sacred, ordinary moment. This is not the end of the journey. This is your beginning. So before we part, I ask you this. Will you give yourself permission to begin again? Because if you do, that's when mindful living truly begins. Thank you for listening to Master the Skill of Mindful Living. If this journey touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share the channel. There are so many others waiting to begin again, just like you.